Today is our first episode ever of Mindful Marketing. So I'm here with Ben, my good friend and business partner. What's up, Ben?
What's going on?
So this is a new thing we're doing. We basically just want to help marketers stay sharp, stay focused, and honestly help kind of calm them down and focus on what matters. That's kind of why we're calling it mindful marketing. Because as marketers, there's a lot of data, a lot of things you need to worry about. And studies show that 85% of marketers actually feel burnout and excessive amounts of stress. So we just want to help run through some things, maybe teach you something, maybe help you focus on what matters. So today, as you know, marketers focus very heavily on data. And recently, it's been a lot harder to collect first party, second party, third party data. We'll get into what that means later because of privacy laws. So, as you know, there's like Facebook and TikTok, they've been under a lot of scrutiny about stealing people's data and using it in ways that they maybe shouldn't. So, today we're actually going to focus on zero party data. We're going to tell you what that is, why it's so important for marketers, and just get into it. So, Ben, first of all, one thing we do during all of these shows is we drink some nice specialty coffee. It's just something we love doing in the morning. Ben, what are you drinking today?
Drinking a naturally processed Colombian coffee.
What company?
It's from 392, so it'd be like who's their? I forget who's their roaster. It's the with the cap.
Yeah,
The
I know
cap.
what you're talking about.
But yeah,
it's
pretty good.
Sounds good. I'm drinking some Black and Bold. It's roasted in Iowa. I think they give a lot of their money to like struggling youth, so that's really good. I accidentally messed up and I put it in a different container, trying to be all fancy, and it's not like vacuum sealed, so it's kind of getting stale. But I won't do that again. So I think we can just jump right into it, right? I got some slides I want to go over, and then you and I can just talk about zero party data and how to use it.
Sounds good.
Can you see that, Ben?
Yep.
Okay, so zero party data. So, as you know, big business is obsessed with big data. And a lot of the time, these big companies will just take as much data as they can, whether they're buying it or whether they're stealing it or whether they're getting it ethically, and they'll try to use it to really focus in on their customers and really try to recommend the right things, really just driving engagement, driving sales, because in the end of the day, profit matters. So there are a few different kinds of data that they collect. There's first party, second party, and third party. So first party is collected directly by the company. Second party is collected by a trusted partner. So if a social media company partners with a different social media company, they could transfer data because they're trusted partners. And third party data would be data that's stitched together from various sources. That last one, third party, has been under a lot of scrutiny because some people think it's unethical when you're stitching when you're stitching data from different sources, because the customer is not directly consenting to it. They might have consented to it in some little setting before, like in their phone, but not even knowing that you're actually stitching all these things together to get the full picture of who they are as a customer. So zero party data is increasing heavily recently, and that is data that is intentionally shared by the user. So these are things that the user is actually actively giving the company to help the company recommend the right things to them, help really tailor the experience so that they're having a really good experience with the product or service. So why is zero-party data so important? Why is it important for companies to focus on this? And why is it important for the customer to maybe give the companies this data? So let me share. I have a video I'm going to share from an Apple commercial recently. By the way, bear with us, guys. This is our first live in a long time. So let me.
Apple's been doing a ton of privacy ads running on TV and stuff.
Yeah, so this is one I recently saw. It was actually really cool. So you can see that, right, Ben?
Mm-hmm.
The next sale is a digital treasure trove charming Ellie's private data.
What?
Lot number 1, her emails. The one she's opened and read, wonderfully personal. Let's start at 240, 260, 280. Sold. Lot number 2, Ellie's drugstore purchases. Voila! Priceless data. Do I hear 480? 500. Sold. Her location data. It's not creepy, it's commerce. Do I hear 600? 620? 640? 660? Sold.
Nala?
All her contacts, even sweet Nana. Sold at 740. Her recent transactions. Her browsing history. Her late-night texting habit. Sold. And now the one you've all been waiting for, and I can promise you won't be disappointed.
Super cool commercial, isn't that? I love that.
That was good.
Yeah,
I haven't seen that one yet.
it's super good. Let me see if I can stop sharing now. So, yeah, basically, that's one of Apple's awesome new commercials. It really makes you, I mean, because you've seen a lot of those new things on iOS, like ask the app not to track, or like, and it makes you think like what's actually going on behind the scenes when they're asking you that.
Yeah.
And I read a little bit about it. That's actually, it's weird because Apple is like touting themselves as this like warrior of privacy and data protection.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, in a capitalistic nature, they're also maybe doing it for themselves too, because it kind of is transferring the data over to the power of the data over to the device and not as much the apps and the social media on the device.
Yeah. So, okay, the device is holding everything versus everything's kind of going through to the apps, etc.
Yeah, and well, it could even give them the power in the future, like to decide which social medias are doing better than
Mm-hmm.
others. That's why Gary Vee always talks about the power is in, well, obviously there's different levels of power, but a huge power that people aren't taking advantage of is the device. He's like, whoever owns the TVs, who owns
Mm-hmm.
the headsets, who owns the phones, gets to actually say what is on there, what people are seeing.
Yeah.
So where it's like iPhone can just decide that it doesn't want Facebook to have all this power and it can start implementing things like this. So
Yeah, because I mean, when what this was probably like a year ago, they started really cracking down on stuff.
yeah, probably.
I knew because a year ago or a year and a half ago, I was working at Tegna, so very large, big national media company, and we had like a big like company-wide meeting about it. Just like literally everybody within marketing and sales in the company, we were all on a Zoom or whatever, and we
Hmm.
were talking about how just what the potential impact this is going to be, etc. And I mean, that's a lot of control because,
Yeah.
I mean, with a company like Tegna, it's not only just because they do like TV ads, because they have local stations, etc., but they also do a lot of digital marketing and things like that, which you're going to kind of run into some of the data problems.
Yeah. And I think that's why it's good. Well, good for Facebook that they acquired Oculus so that when you own the headset, there isn't that barrier of like needing to trust and partner with the companies who own the device. It's like you're putting your fate in your own hands. And the thing is, imagine if Apple came out with its own social media platform. It's like they have the eyeballs, they have the say over which apps can track which things
Yeah.
technically.
Yeah, I think it's so a lot with like the privacy laws or regulations or whatever you want to call it, or at least like the updates that Apple per se is like kind of putting in. And I think Google is starting to implement quite a few things as well. And Android's doing the same thing. But it's becoming more and more important for companies to acquire first party data themselves. Otherwise, you really are going to have a start to have a hard time trusting where your analytics are coming from, if they're accurate or not. A lot of stuff is bouncing off of various IP addresses, etc. And I forget if I haven't stayed super up to date with this one, but the new Apple update coming, they're beta version testing over the summer. It was really intriguing because it was something where Apple can't even track or see who is browsing themselves. So it's like Apple can't track it, and then nobody else can track it. Which I forget if that came out yet or not, but I think that's something if it hasn't, it's definitely going to be coming, because they said they're having pretty good success with it and people were enjoying it, supposedly. So that would make it even harder when you're tracking things. Like if you're advertising on any social platform, as soon as they go off, you have no idea. All you can see is you have visitors on your website, but it might say they're from a certain location, even though they're not.
Yeah, it would basically randomize the IP address. It would send. So, yeah, that's really interesting. And also some of it's like the consumers. I feel like the consumers, 70% of the consumers don't know anything about the privacy regulations.
Yeah.
That was a statistic I read, and it's like there's just this overall feeling of distrust. It's like they don't even know exactly what they're taking and how they're using it, but through maybe seeing these court cases and hearing about it on the news, they're just like, it's bad.
Yeah, I think it is. I think that's right. And it's like, I mean, personally, so like I have an iPhone. I'm a new iPhone user. Braden's super pumped about
time.
it. And one thing that's like kind of, so with like the new regulations that Apple's doing and stuff for apps, is for me, I get like annoyed every time I go into app, it asks like allow the app to track. That's something I haven't really looked into, if you have to switch it, if you can switch it on and off every single time. If you have to,
it basically grabs that first time and then it makes that automatic, and then you can go into settings and change it if you want.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of these articles that I was reading that suggest going in and telling them not to track. I kind of look at it on a basis of, is it going to tailor my experience better? Because it's like most of the data you can get from me out on the internet, I don't care if you have. I mean, it's not like they're getting my social security number, and if they are, then that's obviously terrible. But I mean, you don't know these days. But it's like most of the time it's tailoring like the app or the experience to me, which I like. So that's why younger generations, kind of give it away a lot easier than older generations because they realize that it's just kind of tailoring the digital media
Well,
to them.
it's funny because I think I saw a skit from Whitney Cummings, I think. So she's a pretty well-known comedian, and right, so she goes on like Rogan's podcast and whatnot. But I saw like a snippet of one of her stand-ups, and it cracked me up because she was talking essentially about this.
Yeah.
And how everyone's like freaking out about how everyone's going to steal your data, like your information, everything. And she mentioned how like 10 years ago, everybody and their mother had a book of phone numbers, names, addresses delivered to your doorstep.
Oh
That
yeah.
was like this thick of just like a telephone book. Like you get everyone's numbers, everything.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of funny because like essentially that's what it is today, just in the modern version.
Yeah.
Obviously you do have a little bit more data like browsing history, things like that, purchase behaviors stuff too, but
Right.
the basis of it just kind of cracks me up.
Yeah, I know. So ancient sounding, but
Yeah, it's very similar still.
yeah. So okay, we know all about this first party, third party data. Um, zero party data is kind of coming in hot. It's kind of asking the customers to give you information actively so that it's super ethical and you can tailor the experience to them. So, how do we do that? How are we going to collect zero party data? So, there's a lot of different ways. There's quizzes, email surveys, customer profiles, pop ups. Everyone hates pop ups. Let's just get that out there right now. Right, Ben? I mean,
Yep.
who likes a flipping pop up? So,
Dude, honestly, the most annoying thing with them is when like the X is transparent
oh, I know.
and you
You got to
can't
search
find
for
it.
it, or sometimes it's like a false X. And like,
Yes.
yeah, it's crazy. And then the last one, which is less scalable, but much, much more personable, is like a real phone call or a text. And so the thing is, all of these can be really cheesy. Your customers could hate them, or they could be good based on how you approach it. And basically, I think the best way to get really good first party data is through HVCOs, which is high value content offers. And a few examples of ones that I got recently are these two. So, this first one on the front on the iPad is how to calculate customer lifetime value. So, it was basically, I listened to a podcast, and the guy on the podcast wrote a book, and he said online you can get the toolkit for the book. And in the toolkit was this AI automatically generating lifetime value spreadsheet. So basically, you would enter your CSV of your customers into AI platform, and it would spit out for each one their name, and then right next to it, what is the CLV for that customer based on algorithms that they've created. And this is an amazing HBCO. This is extremely valuable. And I mean, what do you think, Ben, about something like that?
Yeah, I mean, so I think HVCOs are really good, but they're becoming harder to really create because it's become something very common, right?
Hmm.
And and very common, but it's become more like value content offers. It's you have to start thinking more in depth and personable of what that high value part is. Like for
Yes.
this is super, nice and helpful. Because for a lot of people, like calculating lifetime value is hard, just
Yes.
because there's a lot of things that go into it. But it's a tough one to balance, because trying to figure out what that HBCO is can take some time to really consider what your customer base or potential customer base is looking for, of what's going to be valuable to them, creating it, et cetera. Because you can throw something quick together, but it's not going to do much because it's truly not that valuable to them. But
Yes.
I mean, if you can really find something valuable, then for sure, 100%, it's super helpful. But I do
Yeah.
think it's getting harder to try to figure that out because of the amount of companies essentially doing this, and consumers are getting pretty accustomed to this, and they don't really care as much anymore, unless if you do
Yes,
really hit kind of a pain point.
for sure. And I think so. The two questions that you really need to ask yourself before making an HVCO is number one, what does my ideal customer really, really need to solve? What do they want? And it doesn't have to be like the main thing they need to solve. For example, like for this CLV calculation, that might not be the main thing that they're trying to solve, but it's a really nice stepping stone that could give
Mm-hmm.
me information that could then make me want to work with this company in the future. And so that's one question. What do they really want to solve that's difficult for them? And number two is, what's something that you're really, really good at that you maybe take for granted, that you've created maybe for your back end systems? Maybe you have a lot of experience in it. So this AI company obviously has a lot of experience with algorithms and calculating metrics. So they're putting two and two together, where traditional marketers might not be able to calculate their CLV very well, and they're solving that pain point.
Mm-hmm.
So the one behind it, it's the state of growth. So it's basically a super long PDF created by growth hackers, and it's all about testing data. So they surveyed like thousands and thousands of people in their network, kind of around the marketing realm. And they got all kinds of charts and data and statistics on testing, like A/B testing, whether it's important, how much it helped, all things around it. And our business, Ben, is all about testing. Like marketing is just a fancy 9-letter word for test. And that was very appealing to me because one thing that I've noticed is when like we can tell a client statistics
Mm-hmm.
about pages or ads, like they're much more likely to want to do it because it's more concrete.
Yeah, for sure. That's a that's something I think you and I both have really enjoyed more about the kind of ad or rev generating marketing tactics and stuff, just because making things look pretty, it's not as concrete. It's very opinionated. It's, up to the eye of the beholder, essentially, of what somebody thinks. One design could look really good and going to speak to somebody, or another design, etc.
Mhm.
Versus with this stuff, with the data analytics and tracking ads and seeing what converts well on a landing page, etc. It's all data, and it's not my opinion, it's not your opinion. It's just kind of what it is, which is really nice, and it's very concrete. So that's something that's, I think you and I both heavily enjoy, with like kind of having conversations centered around that with clients, because it makes it a lot easier.
Yeah, it definitely does. And that HBCO thing, it's hard to nail, but when you do, like your conversion rates and then sign on rates after the fact can skyrocket. Because it's
Mm-hmm.
like you put together a really quick HVCO that's not very good and doesn't really hit the pain point
Yeah,
and waste a bunch of time. Or if you really lock in on the HVCO, that could be like one of your biggest assets. It
for
could
sure.
drive all kinds of leads, and then you kind of have a foot in the door with them, showing you're the expert, so that when you reach out later, hopefully in some kind of a personalized way, they're much more likely to want to talk with you.
Yeah, and it's important too, I think, to consider when you do a HVCO as well, knowing the stage of the funnel that your buyer is in. More than likely, they're not very low, and definitely, I would say, refrain from heavy messaging, they might start going into your funnel, but it shouldn't be like every day or every other day. It should be treating them where they're at in the funnel. So they maybe are doing their research, they're maybe not ready because they think they could do it on their own, or et cetera, wherever they are, depending on obviously whatever the industry you're in is. It's just important to understand where, when they fill out and give you their information for this, that they're not a ready to buy consumer right now. It's something where they might be a month, a couple months away, a year away.
Mm-hmm.
But you have them in your funnel now. And like Braden, you mentioned, like when they are ready, they definitely will consider you much likely than other people. And especially if you kind of keep in touch with them every so often, not, kind of bombarding their inbox
Mm-hmm.
or bombarding their phone, things like that, which can really just turn your HVCO into basically useless. Even if you create something super valuable, you could annoy the heck out of people. And
Yeah.
then they'll start commenting on, if you're running any ads to it, essentially, of don't fill this out. They'll just won't stop contacting you, etc.
And then once you collect the zero party data, so let's say you kind of had them go through a little quiz that helped you figure out exactly which product they're looking for, maybe what their career is, stuff like that. And then they've maybe downloaded an HVCO or gotten your HVCO. So that's only getting them into the top of the funnel. And now you've piqued their interest, but to work them down the funnel, you can basically provide extra value. So you could have different email flows based on which things they entered. So if they said they're interested in soccer, you could have a different email flow than if they were interested in basketball.
Yeah.
And the more and more you speak to that person and you work them down the funnel, then when you finally hit them with the conversion offer, they're much more likely to take action.
For sure. I think that's super important, just because I think a lot of companies are really noticing, or at least I think people have always known personalization is key within marketing, but we are really starting to get the tactics to be able to do so. Just as technology is growing farther and farther, and like targeting is getting more intelligent, etc. So now it's become, we have the tools to be able to personalize things, and then first party data, because of privacy laws and et cetera, first party data or zero party data, those are both super helpful for companies to be able to still personalize everything to said consumer, which should increase your conversion rates quite a bit.
Yes. I'm going to show a quick little way that we kind of are starting to acquire first party data, and then maybe jump into Klaviyo, which is our emailing system, and show how you could potentially target that person. So I'm going to share my screen really quick. So this is a remodeling company we're working with, and we set up this quiz where basically it'll ask you a series of questions. Are you in the Kalamazoo area? What's your budget? What style, modern, traditional? And how soon are you looking to get started? So then once you enter your information, you can grab some of that and you actually tag that to your customer in a platform like Klaviyo or a platform like Airtable or HubSpot, some kind of CRM. So then once you go into something like Klaviyo, you can set up flows. So I could create a flow and you can choose any one of these flows. You can
Brady, you wanted to show it?
What's up?
Are you wanting to show Klaviyo?
Am I? Oh yeah. Okay, shoot. Yeah. So basically what I did as I logged into Klaviyo. Here we go. So you can go to flows. You can set up a flow. Let's say I want to do a welcome series. That's one of their most popular ones. Let's just say so here's where, based on conditional splits, you can say if the customer is tagged with, let's say they said traditional home, you can send them specific emails. However, if they are more of modern homes, you can send them other emails. And the point is, you can go as deep as you want with this, but I would honestly always say start simple. So if you don't have flows at all, just get a basic flow. And then you can start to maybe add some conditionals slowly as you go,
Yeah.
based on your zero-party data. Because you can't go from 0 to 100, but also you should be working towards 100. So it's like, instead of just saying, this is something I do a lot, and it's really bad. I'm breaking the habit. Even today, I'm breaking the habit. It's like, if I can't do it all out 100% perfection, might as well not do it. And that's not the right mentality. You need to just, what's that next step? You need to take that next step. And even if the live is a little bit clunky, you're just going to do it, and you're going to get better as you go.
For sure.
So
yeah, I mean, I think it's very similar within Klaviyo or running ads. People want to jump to the extremes, but then it ends up hurting your ad or flow or et cetera, just because you're trying to do way too much. It's one thing if you've been doing this for a while, et cetera, and you know exactly what you're doing, and it's kind of all in your head, and it's very simple now. But trying to set up like 8 conditional splits might be pretty challenging, and it gets just kind of confusing.
yeah.
Especially if you don't map it out. So just kind of mapping it out first and seeing what you want to happen, and then going into Klaviyo is super helpful. Same thing for ads. But yeah, it's just always better to start simple, and then after a few days, when you know you might have a little bit more time under your belt, et cetera, then you can start playing once the first simple flow in Klaviyo or ad is working and you see it generating some stuff or people are flowing through it correctly. Then okay, what's the next step I can take? Because then it kind of gets to kind of, Braden, what you're saying is that kind of perfectionism. The perfectionism isn't going to happen overnight.
No, and to go along the same lines, like complexity, like your systems will naturally get more complex as you go, and that's kind of the nature of the beast. And the problem is, if you try to make them complex in the beginning, you're just setting up a house of cards. And I mean, Ben, we've already gone through 3 iterations of Page Army, which I'll explain in just a little bit. But the beginning ones, we were trying to put all the bells and whistles on it, make it all complex and super good and scalable. And it just ends up being kind of a big load of crap, because it's like hard to use, stuff gets broken. So it's like minimum viable product. Start super, super small first, and then you can naturally build on.
For sure. I mean, it's just what is necessary, what are the upfront needs, and do those. And not all these, not like 100% necessary game changer features or side extensions, if you want to call it that, that are going to kind of detract from helping you get to point A to point B.
Yeah, and next session, I think on Wednesday actually, we're going to talk about marketing metrics and how like data is just coming in at you right and left as a marketer. But instead of trying to take all of it in and organize all of it into this amazing way and have this revelation moment, you need to start with a hypothesis. You need to start on Ben's favorite thing in the world, which is a whiteboard. and then try to think of like what data would help me prove or disprove the hypothesis. So, and then pull it in from there. And the same thing with zero party data. It's like you don't need to collect everything. And most of the time, it'll just create more barriers to entry where they'll be like, I don't even want to give all this stuff, so I'm out, and they'll just bounce.
Yeah.
So, moral of the story is just start simple. Start. Another way that we like to collect data, kind of like zero party data, is UTMs. That might be like first or second part. No, that's not second party. It might be first party though. Using UTM parameters and the URL to basically pass through where they came from, what they're looking at, stuff like that. But anyway, all good ways to tailor your experience to them. So I think that's pretty much all we got for today. Anything else you got, Ben?
No, I don't think so.
All right, cool. So I just got a few little announcements at the end here. So first of all, if you are a business owner or a marketing director, every Saturday morning we send out an email, and it's basically just like a newsletter. It's trying to help you stay sharp and focused as a marketer, and honestly just kind of calm you down. Like I said before, 85% of marketers feel burnout, and we just want to help you focus on what matters, because a lot of the time you feel like just you don't know what to focus on. So if you want to subscribe to that newsletter, go ahead and check out the description, and we're going to have a link there. And then next, if you are a business owner or a marketing director, you probably feel like there's not enough time in the day to optimize your marketing channels. We hear this a lot. I would have no problem spending money on marketing if it works. But the problem is, in order to find out what works, you either need to be a magician or you need to use the 4 T's, which is target, tailor, test, and track. So we have basically created a system that allows you to create up to 10,000 landing pages in the snap of a finger. So obviously that's Thanos' little snap, but it would kind of be like a reverse Thanos, because you're not destroying all these pages, you're actually making them. And this is important because it allows us to be really agile with our A/B testing and create super tailored experiences for each ad. You can see if you have an ABC test going, each one can go to a custom tailored landing page without you going through all the design and strategy and development of each one of those pages. And then after we've created those pages, we gather the data so we can actually see what works. So we have a really good focus on things like ROAS and LTV to CAC, because they're more profitability metrics. And unlike just a CPC or a cost per lead, they're actually focusing on the profitability of these campaigns. We can actually track the ROAS for not only campaigns but different platforms. So if you're trying Facebook versus Google, we can also do it for each ad, for each page. So it kind of helps us put together a combination of the highest ROAS elements. And then finally, probably the most important thing about all this is that we're performance based. So we're an ad agency, and if we don't make you money, then we work for free. So if you guys want to just set up a free meeting, a free 30-minute consultation, you can check out the description, and we would be happy to talk with you. What do you want to add, Ben? Anything?
Yeah, and kind of what Braden's saying with performance-based, just so you guys know what that means. Essentially, we kind of talk to you about your business, figure out what matters to you, and basically we only get paid when that thing happens. So if that's a lead, if that's a sale on your website, if that's booking a demo or getting an email or whatever that is, it's we set it up to hit those goals and only those goals. So essentially, we're figuring out what KPI is most important to you, and we only get paid off of when that happens.
Yeah, and we did that because we've heard a lot of people say, we don't want someone to just make a quick buck. We want someone who's like in our corner trying to help us succeed. And when we grow, they grow. And we think as marketers, our job is to get results. So we should be paid upon results.
For sure. And I think a couple things about like Braden and I were both very competitive at heart, and we grew up playing sports and played sports throughout college, and it's definitely developed a pretty competitive nature within us. And we fully believe that you should only get paid when you do a good job and when you perform well. And I mean, that's when you get playing time. That's when, you know, you get seen, etc. So it's very similar with the marketing. And we believe as marketers, we should only get paid when we perform well and do a good job.
Yeah, there's no participation awards in business. I mean,
No.
dog eat dog. So
no Little League.
No. So that was our first episode of Mindful Marketing. It was good. I mean, it was fun. It was a little bit
shaky thing, and then you're saying it's super good. That's fun.
The screen sharing and stuff we'll clean up. But
yeah,
overall, it was good. I mean, just start and run with it, and it's gonna be just fun talking about these different things and hopefully helping people just like try to focus on what matters. And we'll see you back here on Wednesday.
Yep, sounds good. And if you guys have any ideas of what you'd love to see us talk about, just drop it in the comments or shoot us a DM and let us know what questions you got. And we'd be happy to create a kind of a podcast around that and talk about whatever questions you guys got.
Yep, I'm definitely going to get away from this window next time. It's like right on my face. But yeah. All right. Thanks, guys. We'll see you.
We'll see you.